Interestingly, Kaepernick won't stand for an anthem that, as it turns out, celebrates the death of slaves. And I'm willing to bet you had no idea about this, because the only part of the story that we sing is the first verse. And yet, if you keep singing, the Star-Spangled Banner says much more than you might think. Let's start here, because the Star-Spangled Banner came to be during the War of 1812. It was written by Francis Scott Key. The War of 1812 was a war in which the United States attempted to take Canada from the British Empire. But the U.S. underestimated the British, who were able to overrun Washington, D.C. The banner itself, it was written in 1814 about the Battle of Fort McHenry in Baltimore. But as explained in an article by The Intercept, one of the missing parts of history is that part of the reason the British have been so successful during that war was their active recruitment of American slaves. Whole families found their way to the ships of the British, who accepted everyone and pledged that no one would be given back to their owners. Adult men were trained to create a regiment called Colonial Marines, who participated in many of the most important battles, including the August 1814 raid on Washington. Then on the night of September 13, 1814, the British bombarded Fort McHenry. Key, seeing the fort's flag the next morning, was inspired to write the lyrics for the Star-Spangled Banner. So without question, American slaves played a role in fighting against Americans in that battle. About 6,000 former slaves total fought with the British to secure their own freedom. And Key, he speaks of them when he writes this: "No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave, and the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph doth wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave." Which candidly turns the anthem as we know it on its head. See, for those slaves, this was not a land of the free. Reality check: during the War of 1812, there actually was one group fighting for their freedom, and the Star-Spangled Banner celebrates America's triumph over them. So what you need to know is that for all the outrage over Colin Kaepernick, let's end here with a question. In 2015 alone, 102 unarmed black men were killed by police nationwide, and hundreds have died every year. 2014, remember this guy, Eric Gardner? He was choked to death by police because he had sold loose-leaf cigarettes. No officer was charged. 12-year-old Tamir Rice in 2014, he was shot to death within 2 seconds of officers arriving on the scene while holding a toy gun on a playground in Cleveland. And no officer was charged there either. Even this year, 2016, Philando Castillo, he was shot to death in Minneapolis. He had a concealed carry license. He never touched his gun. Yes, he had a gun on him, but he told the officer about it. And yet he was shot to death anyway. And these are only 3 faces of the hundreds of unarmed black men who have died at the hands of police officers. Now here's the question. If you feel outrage when you see this picture of Kaepernick sitting down, and yet you do not feel any outrage when you see these images, well, quite candidly, isn't that part of the problem?